The wind carried a bite that evening, the kind of sharp chill that slid under worn jackets and nipped at bare hands. The streetlights flickered faintly, struggling to chase away the gathering shadows across the cracked sidewalks. 11-year-old Malik walked slowly down the block, clutching a crinkled paper bag as though it contained something more precious than gold. Inside was his dinner: a fried chicken leg, a scoop of mashed potatoes, and a single biscuit, the kind of meal most kids took for granted, but for Malik, it was a treasure. He had gotten it from the after-school lunch program, one of the few reliable sources of food he could count on. His stomach growled so loudly it almost embarrassed him, and he squeezed the bag tighter, whispering softly, "Just a little longer, tummy. We'll eat soon." His sneakers were scuffed, their soles wearing thin, and every step echoed his tiredness. His apartment was still 6 blocks away, a place where the wallpaper peeled off like dry leaves and the air carried the faint smell of mildew, but it was home. His mother would already be at her evening shift at the diner, trying to bring in a little extra cash, leaving Malik to fend for himself until she came back late into the night. The boy's eyes darted across the street, where small groups of people huddled near shuttered storefronts, wrapped in blankets that barely kept the cold away. Malik knew better than to stare for too long. In this neighborhood, everyone had their struggles, and staring felt like judging. But something caught his eye near the old park bench at the corner. 2 figures sitting close together, their backs bent with age, their faces half hidden beneath the brim of a ragged hat and a scarf. Curiosity tugged at him, and against his better judgment, Malik slowed his pace. As he drew closer, the dim glow of the streetlight revealed the faces of an elderly couple. The man's beard was white and patchy, his hands trembling as he rubbed them together for warmth. The woman leaned against him, her cheeks sunken, her lips pale, her eyes glazed with fatigue. Their clothes were thin and threadbare, and the small bag beside them was empty, turned inside out as though it once carried food but no longer did. Malik's steps faltered. He felt the weight of the paper bag in his hand, heavier than ever, as though it carried not food but a question he didn't know how to answer. His stomach growled again, louder this time, and he almost winced. He had been waiting all day for this meal, saving every bit of hunger for this one bag, but as he looked at the couple, his heart twisted in ways that no hunger could match. The woman coughed softly, a frail sound that seemed to shake her entire body. The old man tightened his arm around her, whispering something Malik couldn't hear, but he saw the pain in the man's eyes, the helplessness of not being able to provide, the shame of watching someone you love suffer. It was a look Malik recognized all too well. He had seen it in his own mother's eyes when she thought he wasn't looking. Those moments when the cupboards were empty, and she went without food so he could have the last piece of bread. Malik froze on the sidewalk, torn between instinct and compassion. His body screamed at him to walk away, to get home, to eat before the hunger consumed him. But another voice, quieter yet stronger, whispered in his mind, "They need it more." He swallowed hard, feeling his throat tighten. He thought about his mother, how proud she always was when he showed kindness, how she reminded him that no matter how poor they were, they could still be rich in heart. His fingers trembled as he looked at the bag one more time, knowing exactly what he was about to do would leave him with nothing. But maybe, just maybe, that nothing would mean everything to someone else. With a deep breath, Malik walked slowly toward the bench. The couple looked up, startled, their eyes wary at first. Malik managed a small, shy smile. "Hi," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. The old man nodded slightly, suspicious but polite. The woman's eyes softened, though exhaustion still weighed them down. I have some food," Malik said, holding up the bag. His voice cracked as his stomach growled again, betraying just how badly he needed it. For a moment he almost reconsidered, almost pulled the bag back to his chest. But then he saw the woman's trembling hands, the way she tried to hide her hunger, and that was enough to push him forward. He extended the bag toward them, his hands shaking. "Here, you can have it. I can wait till tomorrow." The old man blinked, stunned. "Son, you don't have to," he began, his voice rough with age. Malik shook his head quickly. "No, please. You need it more than I do." He forced another smile, though inside his stomach twisted in protest. The woman's eyes filled with tears, glistening in the dim light. She reached out slowly, almost as if afraid the boy might change his mind, and took the bag with trembling fingers. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice quivering with emotion. "God bless you, child." The old man placed a hand on Malik's shoulder, his grip surprisingly firm despite his frailty. "You have no idea what this means to us," he said, his voice breaking. Malik just nodded, unsure of what to say, his own eyes burning with tears he didn't want to shed. As he turned to leave, he heard the sound of the bag opening behind him, the rustle of paper, the quiet gasp of relief as they discovered what was inside. The couple murmured prayers of gratitude, their voices lifting softly into the night air. Malik's steps grew heavy as he walked away, his body aching with hunger but his heart strangely light. Every block home felt longer than usual, his hunger gnawing at him with every step. He thought about the chicken leg he would never taste, the mashed potatoes he would never savor, the biscuit he had dreamed about since lunchtime. But he also thought about the smile on the old woman's face, the tears in her eyes, the way the man's hand had pressed gratefully against his shoulder, and somehow that thought filled him more than any meal ever could. When he finally reached the Warren apartment building, Malik pushed open the creaky door and climbed the stairs to their unit. Inside, the silence of the small apartment greeted him. He placed his empty backpack in the corner and sat on the couch, wrapping his thin blanket around himself. His stomach growled angrily, but he hugged his knees close, whispering to himself, "It's okay. Tomorrow will come. We'll eat then." He glanced at the small family photo on the shelf, a faded picture of him and his mother at the park when times were a little better. He touched the frame gently and smiled. "I did good today, Mom," he whispered, even though she wasn't there to hear it. The night dragged on, every hour stretching longer than the last. Malik's hunger kept him awake, his stomach rumbling in protest, but eventually exhaustion claimed him. He curled up on the couch, his blanket pulled tight, and drifted into restless sleep. What Malik didn't know was that just a few blocks away, the old couple was still awake. They ate slowly, savoring each bite as though it were a feast. Between mouthfuls, they spoke softly about the boy who had given them his only meal, their words filled with wonder and gratitude. The old man held his wife's hand and whispered, "That boy has a heart of gold." And as the night grew quieter, their gratitude turned into determination. Determination that the boy's kindness would not go unnoticed, that somehow, some way, the gift he had given them would be returned 100-fold. Malik slept without knowing it, but the small act of sacrifice he made that night had already set into motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. The morning crept in slowly, carrying with it the gray light of dawn that filtered through the thin curtains of the small apartment. Malik stirred on the couch, his body stiff from sleeping, curled up under the scratchy blanket. His stomach groaned in protest, reminding him of what he had given up the night before. For a few moments he lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of pipes in the walls and the distant sounds of the neighborhood waking up. Car engines starting, muffled arguments from next door, the cry of a baby down the hall. He rubbed his eyes and sat up, feeling the emptiness in his belly like a hollow echo. It wasn't unusual for Malik to wake up hungry, but last night had been different. He hadn't eaten at all, not a single bite, and the ache felt deeper, sharper. He thought about the old couple again, the way the woman's hands had trembled as she held the bag, the tears that had welled in her eyes. The memory softened the sting of hunger, but only slightly. His mother emerged from the small bedroom, her hair tied back, her diner uniform wrinkled from the night's shift. She looked exhausted, her eyes heavy with fatigue, but when she saw Malik sitting there, she managed a tired smile. "Morning, baby," she said softly, walking over to kiss the top of his head. "Did you sleep okay?" Malik nodded quickly, not wanting to worry her. He didn't mention that his stomach had kept him awake most of the night. She already carried enough weight on her shoulders. 2 jobs, bills that piled up on the kitchen counter, and the constant fight to keep them afloat. He didn't want to add more. She rummaged through the cupboards, searching for something to give him for breakfast, but the shelves were nearly bare. A box of cereal with only crumbs left, a jar of peanut butter scraped almost clean, and a loaf of bread so stale it crumbled when touched. She sighed quietly, hoping Malik hadn't noticed, but he did. He always did. "Maybe you can grab something at school," she suggested, trying to sound cheerful. "They'll have breakfast there, right?" Malik nodded again. He wasn't sure if there would be enough or if he'd even get a portion, but he didn't argue. His mother looked at him a moment longer, her expression softening with love and worry. She reached out and cupped his cheek. Things will get better, Malik, I promise. Someday all of this, it won't be so hard. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that someday was more than just a word floating in the distance. But deep down, he wasn't sure. Still, he smiled for her sake and whispered, I know, Mom. When it was time to leave, Malik slung his worn backpack over his shoulder. The strap was fraying, and the zipper didn't close all the way, but it held his notebooks and pencils together well enough. He gave his mom a hug before stepping out into the cold morning air. The sky was pale, streaked with gray clouds, and the street smelled faintly of damp concrete. He walked slowly, his sneakers slapping against the cracked pavement. Each step made his stomach feel heavier, but he told himself to push through. He'd get through the day like he always did. He always found a way. But just as he reached the bottom of the stairs and started toward school, a sudden knock echoed behind him. He turned confused. The sound hadn't come from his door this time. It was still ajar from when he left. His mother, curious, stepped out to see who it was. Standing there, framed in the morning light, was a tall man in a perfectly tailored suit. His shoes shone as though freshly polished, and his tie was neatly knotted. He looked so out of place in the rundown neighborhood that Malik blinked, wondering if he was imagining things. Behind the man, a sleek black car idled by the curb, its windows tinted, its paint so glossy it reflected the surrounding buildings. Malik's mother stiffened, instinctively stepping protectively in front of her son. She wasn't used to strangers showing up unannounced, especially not ones who looked like they belonged in a world far different from theirs. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously, her voice firm though polite. The man's eyes shifted past her, settling on Malik. His smile was warm, genuine, though his gaze carried a seriousness that made Malik's chest tighten. "You must be Malik," the man said, his voice smooth but heavy with emotion. Malik froze, unsure how to respond. He glanced at his mother, who looked equally confused. "Yes," Malik finally answered, his voice small. The man took a step closer, lowering himself slightly so he was eye level with the boy. "You don't know me," he began, "but I know you. Yesterday you gave away your only meal to an elderly couple sitting on a park bench." Malik's heart stopped. He hadn't told anyone about that. His eyes widened in shock. How do you know?" he stammered. The man's smile softened and he glanced back toward the car. "Because that couple, they're my parents." The words hung in the air like thunder. Malik's mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Malik blinked rapidly, trying to process what he had just heard. His mind raced back to the old man with the trembling hands, the frail woman with the tired eyes. Could it really be true? The man straightened up and continued, his voice thick with gratitude. "They told me everything. They told me about the boy who gave away the only food he had just so two strangers wouldn't go hungry. They told me about your kindness, your selflessness." His eyes glistened with emotion. "I couldn't sleep until I found you." Malik didn't know what to say. His throat felt dry, his heart pounded in his chest, and his mother stood beside him in stunned silence. The man's presence, his words, everything about this moment felt unreal, like a dream he wasn't sure he wanted to wake up from. The man extended his hand, not in the way adults often did with kids, but with genuine respect. Malik hesitated before shaking it, his small fingers swallowed by the man's firm grip. "My name is Jordan Pierce," the man said. "And because of what you did yesterday, I want to make sure you know just how much it means. Not just to my parents, but to me." Malik glanced at his mother, who looked at Jordan with a mix of suspicion and hope. She had spent her whole life watching out for empty promises, people who came offering help only to vanish. But there was something in Jordan's voice, something in his eyes that told her this was different. Jordan turned to her, his tone respectful. "Ma'am, I know this is unexpected, but please understand. Your son reminded me of something this world desperately needs more of. Kindness without expectation. And I can't walk away without doing something about it." Malik's mother swallowed hard. Her eyes filling with tears, she tried to blink away. She looked down at her son, who still looked bewildered, and whispered, "Malik, baby, this man, he knows what you did." Malik finally spoke, his voice barely audible. "It was just food. They were hungry." Jordan smiled, his eyes glistening. "That's exactly why it matters. You had little, but you gave everything. That kind of heart is rare." The morning sun rose higher, casting golden light across the street, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. Malik, who had gone to bed hungry and woken up expecting another hard day, stood at the doorway of something he didn't yet understand. His sacrifice, one small act of kindness, had opened a door that no amount of hunger or poverty could have prepared him for. And though he didn't know what would come next, he could feel it. Something was about to change forever. Jordan Pierce's presence lingered in the doorway like a strange mix of dream and reality. The black car parked by the curb gleamed in the morning sun, a foreign jewel in a street full of chipped paint and broken glass. Malik clutched the strap of his backpack tightly, almost as though holding on to the only part of life that felt familiar, while his mother stood beside him fighting to steady her breathing. The boy had grown up surrounded by uncertainty, but even he could sense that this moment was something different, something heavy with meaning. Jordan straightened, his polished shoes tapping lightly against the cracked concrete as he stepped closer. "Your son," he said, looking at Malik's mother, "has the kind of heart this world rarely sees anymore." My parents, they couldn't stop talking about him. They said when they looked into his eyes, they saw hope. And you can't buy that. You can't fake that. His words carried not just gratitude, but a kind of reverence, as if he were speaking about someone far older than an 11-year-old boy. Malik's mother swallowed hard, struggling to respond. I don't know what to say. He did what he thought was right. She turned to her son with watery eyes, brushing his cheek softly. "You've always been like that, Malik." The boy shifted uncomfortably, his cheeks warming with embarrassment. "It wasn't a big deal," he mumbled. "They were hungry, I just gave them my food." His stomach, still empty from the night before, growled softly, almost as if to remind him of the price he had paid. But he didn't regret it, not for a moment. Jordan crouched down so he was level with Malik, his sharp suit folding neatly at the knees. "Listen to me, son," he said gently. "When you had nothing, you gave everything. That's not small. That's extraordinary. That's the kind of choice that changes people's lives." He paused, letting the words sink in. "It changed mine." Malik blinked, confused. "Yours?" Jordan nodded. "You see, I grew up around here too. Not far from this block, actually. My family struggled just like yours. We didn't always know where the next meal was coming from. But along the way, people showed us kindness. Small acts like what you did yesterday. And those small acts, they made all the difference. I promised myself that if I ever made it, I'd come back and do the same for someone else." He stood again, his eyes shining with a quiet determination. "And now it's my turn to keep that promise, starting with you." Malik's mother gasped softly, her hand flying to her chest. Malik, wide-eyed, felt his knees go weak. He didn't know exactly what Jordan meant, but the weight in his words carried a kind of finality, a certainty that something life-changing was about to happen. Jordan gestured toward the black car. "I want to show you something," he said. "Both of you. Will you come with me?" Malik's mother hesitated, torn between caution and trust. She had spent years shielding Malik from broken promises and cruel disappointments, but there was something in Jordan's voice, something undeniable. She looked down at her son, who gazed back at her with a mixture of fear and wonder, and in that look, she found her answer. Minutes later, Malik sat in the back seat of the sleek car, the leather cool against his palms as he ran his fingers over the stitching. His mother sat beside him, still tense, her eyes flicking between Jordan in the front seat and the world passing by outside the tinted windows. The car glided smoothly over streets that had once felt endless on foot, carrying them into parts of the city Malik had never seen. After a quiet drive, they pulled up in front of a row of houses that looked like they belonged in another world entirely. Fresh paint, manicured lawns, porches adorned with flowers. Malik pressed his face against the glass, his breath fogging the window. He had only ever seen places like this on television, where kids his age rode shiny bikes and families gathered around barbecue grills in their backyards. The car slowed to a stop in front of one particular house. 2 stories, pale blue siding, white trim, and a wide porch with a swing hanging gently in the breeze. Jordan turned in his seat to face them. "This," he said softly, "is your new home." Silence filled the car. Malik's mother's lips parted, but no sound came out. She stared at Jordan, then at the house, then back at Jordan as though trying to make sense of words too impossible to believe. Malik blinked furiously, convinced he had misheard. "Our what?" Jordan smiled warmly. "Your home, paid for, no strings attached. A safe place where you don't have to worry about leaky ceilings or broken locks or whether you'll have heat in the winter. This is where you belong now. Malik's mother shook her head, overwhelmed. We can't accept this. It's too much. Jordan leaned forward, his voice steady. It's not too much. It's exactly what you deserve. Your son showed more humanity in one evening than some people show in a lifetime. This is my way of making sure that act of kindness doesn't go unnoticed. Malik sat frozen, staring at the house as though it might vanish if he blinked too long. A home, a real home, not the peeling walls of their cramped apartment, not the damp smell that clung to their clothes, not the endless worry about whether the rent would be paid. This was stability. This was safety. This was a dream, but Jordan wasn't finished. He turned to Malik's mother and said, I also have a position waiting for you at one of my companies. Something steady, something reliable, with benefits that will take the weight off your shoulders. He smiled softly. You've carried enough alone. Her hands shook as she pressed them to her face, tears spilling freely now. For years she had sacrificed everything, her health, her sleep, her own meals, just to give her son a chance at survival. And now, in a single morning, it felt as though the universe had answered prayers she hadn't dared to speak aloud. Finally, Jordan looked at Malik. And as for you, young man, he said, his voice filled with pride, your education will be fully funded. Whatever school you want, whatever path you choose, you'll have the support you need. You won't have to wonder if the doors will open for you. They already have. Malik's chest tightened as his eyes blurred with tears he didn't want to shed in front of everyone. He thought about the long nights he had spent staring at the cracked ceiling of their apartment, dreaming of things he thought were impossible, of becoming something more than just a boy in a broken neighborhood. And now, here was this man, telling him that those dreams were not only possible but waiting for him. Jordan placed a hand on Malik's shoulder, his grip firm yet gentle. Do you know why I'm doing this? He asked. Malik shook his head silently. Because when you had nothing, you still gave. That kind of heart, Jordan said, his voice trembling with emotion, can change the world. And I believe one day you will. The rest of the day blurred into a whirlwind of moments Malik would never forget, walking through the house room by room, his feet sinking into carpet softer than anything he'd ever felt, his mother touching the kitchen counter with trembling fingers, whispering, It's ours. It's really ours. Jordan's parents arriving later, embracing Malik as though he were their own grandson, their eyes shining with gratitude. That night, for the first time in his life, Malik lay down in a warm bed that was truly his. The blanket smelled of fresh laundry, the mattress cradled him like a cloud, and the ceiling above him was smooth and whole, without cracks. His stomach was full, his body warm, and his heart overflowing. But more than the comfort, more than the security, it was the promise he made to himself that burned brightest. As he drifted to sleep, Malik whispered into the dark, When I grow up, I'll do the same. I'll help someone the way they helped me. I'll never forget. And he never did. Years later, Malik would become a man of great success, his kindness carrying him through every door that opened, his humility keeping him grounded, and every time he gave, on whether it was food, shelter, or opportunity, he would remember the night he went to bed hungry and the morning a millionaire knocked on his door. It wasn't just the story of how his life changed. It was the story of how one small act of sacrifice had rewritten destiny, proving that sometimes the smallest kindness can spark the greatest miracles. The end.